Have you ever felt that very specific, deep in your bones exhaustion?
Oh, definitely.
You know, the kind that comes from being just constantly busy doing supposedly good things. Like you run around checking off tasks, managing all these obligations, trying to be super helpful.
Right, doing everything right on paper.
Exactly. But then you suddenly realize you feel completely disconnected from the actual purpose of what you're doing. You're just entirely empty.
Yeah, it's a very real burnout.
And on the flip side of that exact same coin, think about the people you encounter who possess this vast encyclopedic knowledge of a subject.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
Right. But they never use that knowledge to actually help anyone. Instead, they use it to shame others, to flex their intellect, and basically just dominate every conversation.
Both of those scenarios actually stem from the exact same human dysfunction.
Mm.
I mean, we routinely mistake frantic activity for genuine connection,
Yeah.
and we completely mistake the aggressive accumulation of data for actual wisdom. It is just an incredibly draining way to live.
It really is. It fundamentally breaks how we relate to each other.
And how we understood our own purpose, too.
So today we are doing a deep dive into a really brilliant analysis by Frank Leo that diagnoses this exact modern disease.
It's a fascinating piece of work.
It is. He does it by looking through the lens of a very ancient story. His thesis is titled, A Theological Thesis on the Relationship That Pleases God.
Which is a heavy title, but the content is so incredibly practical.
Yeah, subtitle is Contemplative Obedience versus Self-Proclaimed Service. And look, this isn't just a standard religious commentary. We are going to explore original Greek texts, Syriac translations, and profound ancient rabbinic traditions to decode the famous story of two sisters, Martha and Mary.
The genius of Leo's work here is how it takes this brief little narrative about hosting a guest and, well, uses it to expose the toxic ways we weaponize knowledge today.
And how we perform our own busyness.
Exactly. So we all know the basic setup of the story from the Gospel of Luke, right?
Yeah, Jesus arrives at a village.
Right. And Martha welcomes him into her home and just immediately starts rushing around trying to serve everyone.
Meanwhile, her sister Mary simply sits down at his feet to listen.
Right. And usually this is taught as, a simple Sunday school lesson about prioritizing spiritual things over household chores.
Like, don't worry about the dishes, basically.
Exactly. But if we actually look at the original language, the physics of Martha's busyness look entirely different than just a woman doing chores.
Okay, let's unpack this because the text uses a very specific Greek word to describe Martha's state, right?
It does. The word is periospato.
Periorobato.
Yeah. And the grammatical structure of that word reveals the real problem. It is an imperfect passive verb.
And a passive verb completely changes the meaning.
It changes everything. We usually think of serving as an active choice, right?
Yeah.
Like, I choose to cook, I choose to set the table.
Sure.
But the grammar here implies she isn't actively in control of her serving at all. Her busyness is literally acting upon her. The literal translation is closer to being drawn away or being dragged around.
So she has essentially been taken hostage by her own chores.
Exactly. She is being pulled in every possible direction by duties that she herself decided were absolutely necessary.
It really makes me think of someone hosting a dinner party who becomes just relentlessly obsessed with pulling off a flawless, highly complicated meal, like a perfect souffle.
Oh, we've all been there and seen that.
Right. They are sweating, stressing, snapping at their spouse, and eventually they end up literally screaming at their guests because someone used the wrong fork.
Completely ruining the vibe.
Exactly. The performative event completely ruins the actual human connection they were supposedly trying to foster. The meal just became way more important than the people eating it.
The ancient Syriac translation of this text, the Peshitta, captures that exact psychological state perfectly.
Oh, really? How do they translate it?
It uses a phrase that conveys a self-imposed exhaustion.
Self-impose. That hits hard.
It does. Martha is troubled and agitated by this heavy burden, but it is a burden she placed entirely on her own shoulders.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus didn't ask for a massive feast.
He showed up.
Right. She decided a massive feast was the standard of a good host, and then she allowed her own standard to literally drag her around the room.
And that self-imposed exhaustion breeds this really wild spiritual arrogance. If you look at what Martha actually says when she finally snaps, it's shocking.
It really is, if you break it down.
She marches up to Jesus, and first she accuses the creator of the universe of not caring. She demands Does it not matter to you?
Which is incredibly bold.
And then she actually issues a command to him. She says, tell her therefore to help me. Like, she is publicly shaming her sister and giving direct orders to God.
Think about the absolute presumption of that moment. She believes her self-appointed tasks are so universally critical that she has the authority to correct the Lord.
The creature commanding the creator.
Exactly. Her service is no longer about welcoming a guest. It has become a platform for her own self-justification. When we get trapped in that kind of performative busyness, we start to view anyone who isn't matching our frantic energy as an obstacle or a disappointment.
We elevate our anxiety to the level of a moral absolute.
That's perfectly said.
But I do struggle with this application in the real world a bit.
How so?
Well, if Martha's frantic serving resulted in her barking orders at God, what is the actual alternative? If Mary sitting on the floor is the gold standard, how does society actually function?
That's the classic pushback.
Right, because someone has to cook the food, manage the spreadsheets, do the laundry. Is the text really advocating for a world where we all just sit around and wait for things to happen? Because, I mean, isn't Jesus being a bit harsh? She's just trying to make sure everyone is fed.
What's fascinating here is how Jesus actually responds. He repeats her name, Martha, Martha.
Which sounds like a scolding to modern ears.
It does,
Yeah.
but in ancient rhetorical devices, that repetition actually shows urgent, gentle affection, not anger. Yeah, he diagnoses her with a divided mind. The Greek word is merimnus. He's showing that her inner turmoil, not her cooking, is the actual issue.
Okay, so it's not about the chores themselves.
Right. And as for Mary, it looks like passivity from the outside, but the mechanics of what she's doing are highly active.
How so? She's just sitting there.
Well, the original Greek word describing Mary's posture, parakathisthesia, paints a picture of a very deliberate, settled, and humble positioning at a rabbi's feet.
So it's not just zoning out or daydreaming.
Exactly. It is purposeful proximity.
Yeah.
Jesus responds to Martha's outburst by saying Mary has chosen the good portion, the Greek word meris.
The good portion.
Yeah, and to understand the weight of that, we have to look back at Old Testament theology, specifically Psalm 16, verse 5, where God himself is described as the inheritance or the portion of his people.
So Mary isn't choosing a task to perform. She is choosing a person to receive from. She is choosing the source itself.
Spot on. And that choice requires a really specific kind of internal discipline. Frank Leo's analysis connects this to the famous command in Psalm 46.
Be still and know that I am God.
Exactly. In the ancient Greek translation of the Old Testament, the word used for be still is skolosate. It literally means to make leisure for God.
Make leisure. I love that.
It means to intentionally free oneself from occupation. Mary deliberately freed herself from distraction to focus on the essential, while Martha allowed herself to be pulled apart by the non-essential.
So what does this all mean for us? Because again, addressing the laziness question, how does making leisure translate to actually living a productive life? Does this mean the ideal relationship with God is just sitting around doing nothing? Isn't that just spiritual laziness?
Well, we can look at Pastor Stephen Tong's commentary on this dynamic. He argues that Mary is actually demonstrating the highest possible wisdom.
Why is that?
Because true, effective service doesn't begin with human busyness. It begins with hearing the word. He notes that service without hearing the word is blind service.
Wow, blind service.
If you don't first sit and listen to what is actually required, you are just running enthusiastically in the completely wrong direction.
You are solving problems that nobody asked you to solve.
Exactly, much like Martha making a massive feast when a simple meal would have sufficed.
So it requires active listening as an absolute prerequisite for action. That actually ties directly back to the Jewish Shema in Deuteronomy 6, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
Hear, O Israel, because in ancient Hebrew culture, the command to hear was never just auditory. It wasn't just about sound waves hitting an eardrum.
Right, it was much deeper.
It carried the full, massive weight of hearing, obeying, and responding as a single integrated action.
Yes, you cannot truly respond to reality if you haven't first stopped your own frantic movement long enough to actually listen to what reality is asking of you.
And this Martha dynamic doesn't just apply to dinner parties or household chores.
No, not at all.
Think about how we treat information and learning today. This is where the thesis makes a really brilliant pivot.
It's my favorite part of the analysis.
It takes the toxic self-justifying busyness of Martha and maps it perfectly onto people who frantically gather data or memorize scripture or hoard facts.
Not to actually understand the world, but to perform their intellect.
Exactly. The weaponization of knowledge.
It is such a pervasive issue right now.
It really is. The analysis explores the fundamental difference between mere knowledge, which is gnosis in the Greek, and deep experiential relational understanding.
Which is epignosis.
Right. When someone is just stockpiling gnosis, they are acting exactly like Martha stockpiling dirty dishes. It's just an accumulation of things to prove their own worth.
The Apostle Paul addresses this beautifully in his first letter to the Corinthians when he writes, "Knowledge puffs up, but love builds up."
That imagery is incredibly vivid.
It is. Mere factual knowledge without a grounding in love or genuine connection just inflates you like a bellows.
Like a bellows, yeah.
You look massive, you take up a lot of space in a room, but you are entirely hollow. You are literally just full of hot air.
It's like someone memorizing the entire instruction manual for a car, but using it solely to yell at other drivers.
That's a perfect analogy.
Right. While they themselves never actually turn the key and drive anywhere, they possess the knowledge, but they just use it to elevate themselves and leave this wake of devastation behind them.
That captures the hypocrisy perfectly. People who treat sacred texts, or honestly any profound body of knowledge, like a competitive trivia contest, are acting exactly like the religious elite of the ancient world.
Like the Pharisees.
Exactly. Jesus harshly condemned the Pharisees in the Gospel of Matthew for this precise behavior.
What were they doing?
He pointed out that they would meticulously tithe tiny garden herbs, literally counting out individual flakes of mint, dill, and cumin to ensure they were following the absolute letter of the law.
Just obsessing over the details.
Right, but while they were counting mint leaves, they completely neglected the weightier matters of the law: justice, mercy, and faithfulness.
Why do we do that? Why is it so common to obsess over the tiny quantifiable details while completely ignoring the massive qualitative realities of human suffering or genuine connection?
Because measuring herbs is easy.
Yeah.
And practicing mercy is incredibly difficult. Memorizing a rule gives you a false sense of control over a chaotic universe.
That makes so much sense.
Loving a broken person requires vulnerability and relinquishing control. The Pharisees had all the data points, but they entirely missed the heart of the author.
And we see the ultimate example of this danger during the temptation in the wilderness, right?
Yes, Matthew chapter 4.
Satan himself quotes scripture. He directly recites Psalm 91 to Jesus. He knew the text flawlessly, but he stripped it of its context and its underlying spirit to serve his own manipulative, destructive agenda.
He knew the gnosis, but rejected the epignosis.
Exactly. Charles Spurgeon, the famous 19th century preacher, summarized this tragedy perfectly.
What does he say?
He said, "A Bible wielded as a sword against fellow believers rather than against the enemy is a Bible misused."
Wow. That is powerful.
He recognized that when you take the text and turn it into a weapon to shame the person sitting next to you, you have fundamentally misunderstood what you are holding. You have basically become a Pharisee reborn in modern clothing.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the prophet Hosea diagnoses this misalignment centuries earlier.
In Hosea 6.
Yes, Hosea 6, verse 6. God declares that he desires steadfast love and the knowledge of God over external burnt offerings.
Over the performance.
Exactly. When we memorize texts or accumulate facts just to win an argument, we are basically offering a performative burnt offering. We are putting on a religious display.
But because it lacks the steadfast love that is the actual prerequisite for understanding, God rejects the offering entirely.
It is just more of Martha's noisy, clattering pots and pans.
You know, what I find so compelling about this analysis is that this contrast, this tension between the life-giving spirit of a teaching and the performative, rigid letter of the law, it's not exclusively a Christian New Testament concept.
Not at all.
Frank Leo proves that this exact same warning is deeply embedded throughout ancient Jewish rabbinic tradition.
The rabbinic sourcing reveals a completely universal truth about the human condition. If you look at the Mishnah, specifically the Pirkei Avot, or the Ethics of the Fathers, there is a profound warning in chapter 1. It says, whoever multiplies words brings sin.
Think about Martha's reaction. Her anxiety caused her to multiply words against her sister and against her Lord.
Exactly. In contrast, the rabbinic ideal was often embodied in the concept of shatika, which is silence.
But not just an empty silence.
No, not a vacant, empty silence. It's the disciplined silence of a mind that is actively listening before it dares to speak.
There's also this fascinating passage from the Babylonian Talmud, Barakat 17a, that warns about the danger of a divided heart.
Which mirrors Martha's divided mind perfectly.
It does. The ancient rabbis understood that when a heart is split by 1,000 different performative concerns, that heart literally becomes an agent of sin.
Because you lose focus on the core essence.
Right. When you get caught up in managing the optics of your actions, your own anxiety forces you off the rails.
You know, the most devastating critique of the modern online debater actually comes from the famous ancient sage, Hillel.
Oh, I love this story.
The Talmud in Shabbat 31a records a story where someone challenged Hillel to summarize the entire Torah while standing on one foot.
Which is an absurd challenge.
Completely. But Hillel responded, "What is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow. This is the whole Torah in its entirety, and the rest is its commentary. Go and study."
That is an incredible distillation.
And it highlights the total tragedy of weaponized knowledge. The people who memorize hundreds of verses or stockpile endless statistics but use them to belittle, shame, and intimidate others are violently violating the core principle of the very text they claim to revere.
They possess mountains of the commentary.
But they have completely and utterly missed the essence.
They missed the entire point of the exercise. And here's where it gets really interesting. This leads to one final rabbinic rule highlighted in the analysis that completely shifts how we should think about engaging with other people.
Mishnah Avot 2, verse 5.
Yes, it states very simply, "The one who is easily shamed does not learn."
The psychological insight there is profound.
It really is.
When a human being feels shame, their cognitive defenses just immediately go up.
Mm-hmm.
The capacity to absorb new information or to change a deeply held belief or to experience genuine curiosity, it shuts down entirely.
Which means there is a massive tragic irony to the way we often argue today.
How do you mean?
Well, if you are using your vast knowledge to try and sound smart and you utilize that knowledge to shame someone for what they don't know, you are literally preventing them from learning.
That's exactly right.
By trying to force an education on them through humiliation, you are destroying the exact mechanism they need to actually understand your point. If your engagement with knowledge makes you arrogant, you haven't actually understood what you're studying.
And you are actively preventing others from understanding it too. This raises an important question about how we approach learning in general.
Oh, hey.
True study and genuine engagement with deep truths should always foster humble inquiry. It should invite people into a shared space of discovery. It should never be used as a blunt instrument for intimidation.
Never.
Martha's fundamental failure wasn't that she chose to cook a meal for her guests. Her failure was that her service became entirely self-referential.
It became all about her.
It became a monument to her own effort, and she weaponized that effort against her sister. Mary recognized that the ultimate good wasn't to produce a flawless performance, but to sit, to receive, and to allow herself to be transformed by the presence of truth.
Ultimately, this challenges us to hold a mirror up to our own daily lives. And I want you to think about your own habits right now.
It's a tough reflection.
It really is. Think about the things you consider to be your good actions. Are they truly outward-facing, or are they secretly self-referential, like Martha's dinner preparations?
Are you genuinely serving your coworkers, your family, or your community to help them? Or are you exhausting yourself just to prove to everyone that you're a good, highly capable person?
And when it comes to the information you consume, are you gathering facts, reading articles, and memorizing data just to win arguments online? Or to sound like the smartest person in a meeting?
Or are you truly seeking to understand the world and connect with the people in it?
It is the difference between possessing the rigid letter of the law and embodying the life-giving spirit of the law.
One demands performance, while the other invites transformation.
Which leaves us with a final, incredibly provocative thought. The thesis reminds us that the letter kills, but the spirit gives life.
It's a profound summary.
So think about the spaces in your own life right now where you are desperately clinging to rigid rules, to endless, exhausting, busy work, or to winning every single intellectual debate you stumble into.
We usually cling to those behaviors because they give us a false sense of control in a world that feels overwhelmingly chaotic.
We want to be the ones managing the room. But what would happen if you simply let go of that? What if you dropped the exhausting, self-imposed need to be the one doing everything or knowing everything?
It would be incredibly freeing.
What if, instead of screaming at the people you love over a ruined souffle or a misunderstood fact, you allowed yourself to just sit quietly with open hands and actually listen?